Hey y'all, I'm going to do another little review today. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Camillus Model 99 or camp knife or scout knife, however you want to call it. It's been called many names. This knife or this pattern knife has been made by a whole bunch of people. Case, Boker, Imperial, Ulster. It's been used by the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, and Camillus. I even have a knife that I was issued by the Army that is made by Camillus in this pattern, but it's called a demo knife or a military utility knife. But it's essentially this pattern, but all in stainless steel. I'll do another review on it later. My history of this knife goes back to the Boy Scouts. Probably a lot of you were Boy Scouts. I actually had a Camillus, but it was a Boy Scout labeled pocket knife. And I don't know, I can't remember. I think it had blue scales. I'm not sure. It was very similar to this knife, though. And I carried that knife. At the time, I used to think that it wasn't a real pocket knife. I always thought a real pocket knife was a case. But it was a very well-made USA-made knife, pretty much just like this one. Back then we had you had to earn the right to carry a knife, and then you'd get what's called a totem chip. And basically you just had this little card, and if you did something unsafe or whatever it was, they'd cut off a corner of that card, and if you got all four corners cut off, you couldn't carry your knife anymore. I got 3 corners cut off because I used to throw one of these into a tree, or play mumbly peg, or just do dumb stuff. I really wasn't into knives back then. I didn't know about them, and I didn't know how good these knives were. I didn't know how to tell if a knife was good or not. I just knew my grandpa carried a case all the time, and I thought that was the be-all, end-all. But anyway, I had one of these. One of my first real pocket knives. I just didn't know how good it was. How I got this knife was a pretty cool story. I was in San Antonio, Texas, living there at the time, quite a few years ago here, and I walked into a gun store there. It's a real good gun store if you're ever in town over there, called Nagel's. And in the front of Nagel's, they have a real honest-to-goodness knife shop. They're kind of high dollar, because it's a real brick-and-mortar store, but they got knives by Randall, Case, really fancy traditional knives, fixed blades, modern folders, everything you could think of. And they're right there. You can check out the knife, and they have the stock right there, no ordering. I mean, they just reach in the drawer and get you one. Anyway, I was in there one day, and this old boy that I know, I kind of know him. He was in there kind of grumbling. He's in the back having to clean up these old drawers that probably nobody had been in a million years. And long story short, he's taking out some boxes. He had some boxes piled up, and a couple of them I saw said Camillus. I looked on the side, and they said 99, and I knew what that was. I knew it was this knife. So I said, hey, I'll take all 3 of these. That's what he had. And I go, how much you want for me? He said, I don't know, but I know the last time I saw them, we were clearing some out at like $19, so I'll let you have them for that. So I bought all 3 for $19 each, and the other 2 I still have in boxes, untouched. But this one I took out of the box and threw the box away, and decided to make it a user. I carry it. I carried it today. I don't carry it as much because I'm a big fan of the Case Stockman. That's large Case Stockman and chrome vanadium. That's just the knife that rings my bell, so to speak. But this knife I have the most history with. It really goes back a ways. I'll go over some of the features here. Well, first we're going to look. This is plastic. It looks like bone, but it's dyed real nice, and it's jigged real nice, and it looks like bone, but it's plastic. But I know that this plastic is tough because I beat the snot out of one of these when I was a kid, and that never happened. Nothing ever really happened to the knife. The military version of this knife and some of these, they said they had problems with the spring breaking, but that's not true. It's just a design and people not knowing. Since there's 4 blades and they all share a spring, 2 on this side and 2 on this spring. If you open all 4 blades at the same time, or 2 blades on one spring, This little middle pin here acts as a pivot, and it just lets that spring rock. But if you open the blade here and a blade here, what happens is this acts as a fulcrum, and you got pressure on this side of the spring and pressure on this side, and it can snap that spring, and it does on occasion. I've never had that happen. Only one knife that happened to was a Rough Rider, and I made a video about it. And I've owned knives for quite a few years, and never had any problems. But you should always just open one blade at a time, even if it's dirty. Clean it out. It is stainless steel. And then open the blade and dry each one off one at a time. And you can avoid that from happening. It has a bail here. That's what they call this. It's really a strong little bail. And that's very traditional. I got a piece of paracord tied on there. But back in the day, when I was a kid, we just used leather or string, and we'd tie it to this bail. And then drop the knife in your pocket. And then you would tie it to your belt loop or your belt. And then that way you could take the knife out and use it. And then if you dropped it, you wouldn't lose it. And we were always climbing trees and doing stuff, so that was one way of keeping from losing your knife. And anyway, I'll go over some of the blades with you here. We got a main blade that is a spear point, and that is good for making a friction fire stick, like carving a fireboard. And, you can do a lot of stuff with that shape of blade. It's a very useful utility shape. I don't know when this knife was made. Some of y'all, there we go. You can look at that tang stamp. And I tried to research it. I think I came up with the year 2000, but the way and the font and the way that's written, you're supposed to be able to age the knife. Maybe some of y'all that are experts can do it. I don't know. But I think that's what I got. You look at the grind lines, they got some, you can see them, they're visible. It's not real polished, but they're real even, straight, and pretty grind lines on that blade. You can see it. And the edge grind is expertly done on both sides. It's really pretty. They did a great job. The transitions from the scales to the bolsters, the springs are baby butt smooth. This knife is well put together. About the only thing I can say bad about it, and it's not really that bad, is it has some nail breaker springs. If I were to give a pull weight on this knife, I would say it's about a 7 to a 7.5, and that's the amount of effort it takes to open the blade. I'll give you a little idea of the snap. It's got good snap, and I'll give you an idea of closing. Got good walk and talk on this knife. Really nice. Comes with a cap lifter, bottle opener, slash little miniature pry bar there. That's a really good thing. Pretty familiar tool to most of you. Can opener, and this can opener works. It's very well sharpened up here. And this was made in an era when people still had to open cans with the can opener, and it works. It works really well. And then you get you an awl, or a hole punch, or whatever you're going to call it. It is sharpened really sharp along this edge. It'll even cut you. And the tip is, it's a kind of a chisel ground, but it is like a razor blade. It is sharp at the end. They really took that seriously. Another company, a U.S. company that made knives that's still in business, unfortunately, Camillus went out of business, and then the factory burned down, so there ain't no chance of them coming back. Somebody can buy the name, but they'll never be making knives in the old New York factory again, and that's a real shame. There's a company called Bear & Sons out of Alabama. They make USA made knives, and they make this pattern and some other knives. But I'm going to be honest with you, they kind of suck. They're not good. I've seen a couple of examples, and they're just real shoddy, like some drunk monkeys built a knife. I don't know what it is, but at least the specimens I've had, and I've had several of them, tried to give them a chance because they're USA made, whatever, but they suck. I don't know how they're still in business, but they are. But these guys, man, they build a quality knife, and I'll show you when I get that demo knife out. I mean, they made millions of those for the U.S. military, and I got issued one, and it's a great knife. In fact, I bought another one as a backup because I love it so much. You used to find those knives everywhere at the military surplus shops, but not anymore. But that one is kind of special to me as it got issued, and so I just kind of keep it as a keepsake. I keep them around, but what's cool how you identify the military ones is they just stamp the date on the blade. You'll know when it was made, but this one you have to do a little research. I'll give you a look around the knife again. Once again, this is called the Camillus Model 99. If you want to find a used one on eBay. Ulster makes a knife in this pattern. Case makes one called the Scout Junior. And they actually made a pretty fancy one for the Boy Scouts with blue scales and a little gold shield, which are the Boy Scout colors. And it was real nice, but those are kind of rare and hard to find. And the Camp Scout Junior is getting pretty hard to find too, because they hadn't made them in a while. But if I collected a pattern, I would like to collect these because I think they're cool. I have quite a few camp pattern knives, or Scout knives. Ulster makes them. Imperial makes them. They got a bunch that made them for the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts. I got a 1924 reproduction made by Remington of a 1924 Scout knife. And then I have a real one that was made like in 1930 or 1935, somewhere around there. That shows some pretty good wear, but it's pretty cool that these knives have been around that long. If you really want just a, and I don't know how many of y'all were in the Boy Scouts, or if you have one of these laying around, but these really, at least to me, they bring back a lot of memories. A lot of memories of childhood. It's a very, very common pattern, this Scout pattern. And Victorinox still makes these, in roughly these same patterns. You can get the Cadet, which is basically the same knife, except it has a little nail file. But they do make this pattern has been issued to the Swiss military. That's basically this pattern to the German army. It's a pretty well-known, pretty ubiquitous pattern. And that flathead screwdriver was good for the rifles they used. And once again, they, like in Vietnam and stuff, all the way up till, I don't remember exactly when, but they were eating these things called C rations and K rations that were rations that came in cans. Although the Army used to issue this thing called the P-38 can opener. I don't have one in front of me, but I have one. I wasn't in when they, had them, but it's a really good can opener that came with those rations. And then, of course, you have the MRE. You don't really need anything. And then, now when you go camping, you got that freeze-dried food. You just tear it open and put a little boiling water in there, and you got a meal. But last time I went camping, I brought canned goods, sardines or oysters, smoked oysters, and some chili, and stuff like that. And I needed a can opener. Most of the cans now, though, a lot of them have that pull tab, which is a pretty good idea. You wonder why they didn't think of that sooner, but a lot of times those things pop off, and you have to go right back to using a can opener again. So that can opener is more useful than you think. But anyway, this has been my quick little look at and a miniature review and walk down memory lane with the Camillus camp knife / Scout knife. I'll always think of it as Scout knife because that's what I had. But it evokes a lot of memories, and for military guys and Boy Scouts and maybe Girl Scouts. I mean, this knife has served and been around for a long, long time. It's a very traditional pattern. It wasn't carried by the cowboys or anything, but it's been used by our military, by Boy Scouts, by regular hikers and campers, and everything the world over. It's a really cool knife. I invite you to find you one and check it out yourself. Rough Rider even makes one called the Camp King. It's big. It's a lot bigger than this one, but it has all the cool stuff on it, and it's it evokes the era that these knives were really big. I think they're still in use. I think they're still big, and a Victorinox still makes a knife in this pattern. Anyway, I appreciate y'all stopping by. if you want. I'd really appreciate it if you like and subscribe. I don't know why. I don't hope I'm not boring people, but I get a lot of views. I've had a couple of videos that have had something like almost 5,000 views, but I got only almost 200 subscribers, and I'm like, man, if some of y'all watching would subscribe, that'd be great. I just talk off the top of my head. I'm not real fancy. I don't have cool intros or anything like that. I just love talking about knives. And if that's you, share your story. Leave me a comment, like and subscribe, and come on back. And I'd love to have you. I'd love to hear your stories. I love talking about knives. I'd like to hear about your knives. Anyway, appreciate y'all stopping by, and we'll catch you down the road.